Hello, this is Craig, and this is Mini Bible Study Series number 22 on the Sermon on the Mount. And we're moving into Matthew chapter 7. Matthew chapter 7, starting with verse 1 and 2. And this is one of the most misunderstood, misquoted scriptures in the Word of God. And it's pretty much everybody knows it. It's not for a good reason, typically. But here it is, Matthew chapter 7, verse 1 and 2. Judge not, that you be not judged. For with what judgment you judge, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. I'm pretty sure all of us have heard the comment, don't judge me. Don't judge me. God, Jesus said not to judge me, and he did. But what does he mean here? A lot of people use this for excuse to do whatever they want. You know, they feel like, well, Jesus said don't judge, so I can do whatever I want. That's not what he meant at all. I believe it's more of Jesus saying, don't be judgmental, because bear in mind, you'll be judged also. But also, if in Matthew chapter 7, we're going to skip ahead briefly and look at verse 20. Matthew chapter 7 and verse 20. Jesus is talking about being careful of false prophets. And in verse 20 he says, therefore, by their fruits you will know them. In other words, by their fruit, by their action, what comes out, you're going to know them. Well, how are you going to know that unless you use judgment or discretion? So we need to use judgment. Jesus encourages us to use good judgment. And sometimes, people come across as nice and helpful, but they have an agenda. We all know that type, unfortunately. And they will come across as nice and then be judgmental or hurt us. And we have to be careful with situations like that. We have to be careful not to be taken advantage of. And so we have to make a judgment call. And that's what Jesus is saying in verse 20. But what's he mean by judge not lest you be judged? He's saying, I believe Jesus is saying, don't be judgmental and be careful when you use judgment. Because say if I judge someone and I feel like this certain punishment should come upon them, I need to bear in mind that if I make that same mistake, that punishment should come to me. Also, I'm not excusing sin when I say this. I'm just stating what I believe is fact, and that is we need to be careful not to rush to judgment. One thing that really bothers me is oftentimes you'll see someone make a mistake, maybe in political office or whatever, and overall they're a good person, and everybody's calling for their firing. Should we really be judged so harshly by one mistake? We need to love one another, care for one another. Yes, we need to not be doing foolish things, but yet think about it. We all are human. We all have made mistakes. And we need to be careful not to be judgmental to others of the same mistakes we make. So I believe when Jesus is saying is, judge not lest you be judged, he's telling us to be careful with that. He's telling us not to be judgmental. He's telling us to bear in mind that we're going to be judged also. And so I urge you, if someone says, don't judge me, there's not a whole lot you can do with that. Because if you try to tell them that's not what Jesus meant, they're not going to want to hear you. They're advocating, they're trying to get approval for whatever they want. And that's not what Jesus is saying. But bear in mind, whenever we have an urge or feeling to judge someone, we need to be careful. Let's not be judgmental. May the Lord bless you and be a blessing to someone this week.